Hi guys, welcome back. So today I'm working with these beautiful fabrics that I got from Fabricland, and I found this really cool pattern on Pinterest. I kind of hacked it so I can use up the charm squares that I have. I have a bunch of 10-inch squares as well, and I'm going to be cutting these up into 5-inch squares to use for this project. These are the coordinating fabrics I'm using, and I want to start with this print. I think it's so pretty. So I'm just trying to find the best fabric that would work with it. These are the charm squares I have that are already cut, and I'm going to be using the taupe for the skin color. So I'm starting by cutting my 10-inch squares down into 4 5-inch squares. And this is a directional print, so I had to be careful when I was positioning the pieces. But this is such a fun print. I plan on getting more of it, and I'm going to cut it up. I have a couple black frames, and I'm going to cut out some of the scenery and place them in the frames. I think it'll look really cool. And then I cut a bunch of 3-inch strips of my printed fabric and set those aside. I'm going to be using that for the sleeves of the dress. I prepared a few more charm squares, and then I cut a 6-inch square of the printed fabric. I need two of these, one of the printed fabric and one of the coordinating solid fabric. So I went ahead and cut those out, and I drew a diagonal line on the solid fabric to make it easier for sewing. I'm going to sew on either side of the drawn line, and I should end up with 5-inch squares. I'm going to have to square the block up, but I should have enough space to give me a nice 5-inch square. And then I prepared the fabric for the arms and legs. I'm going to be using 3-inch strips for this, and I'll be using a charm square for the head. And then I started with the head block. For this, I'm going to be using 1 3/4 inch squares for the background fabrics. So I went ahead and cut 4 of those to put on the 4 corners of the head block. And then I started sewing. I'm sewing using a 1/4 inch seam allowance on either side of the drawn line. And then I'm just going to cut this block open on the drawn line, and I should have 2 beautiful half square triangles. I'm preparing the background squares, so I went ahead and cut more charm squares. Then I cut a couple of 3 by 5-inch strips of my background fabric. I'll be using that to complete the arm and sleeve block. And here are the half square triangles. I'm just finger pressing these. I'll do a better job later. For now, I'm just trimming the dog ears, and I'm going to be using the diagonal lines on my cutting mat to line up the center seam so that I can make sure that I have perfect blocks. And now I'm working on the head block. For this, I just placed the background fabric on the 4 corners, and I'm going to sew using a diagonal line along the 4 corners, and that is the head block. I contemplated adding eyes and a mouth and a nose, but I'm so scared of it looking wonky and scary, which I guess would be okay, but no. So I'm just gonna leave it plain, but maybe in time when I feel more confident, I can add some features. In the meantime, I really enjoy how this block turned out. Okay, so it's looking pretty good so far, but I'm going to lay my pieces out to make sure that I have all the pieces I need and prepare whatever else I missed. I'm preparing the sleeve blocks here. I just cut these 10-inch strips down in half, and these will be the sleeves of the dress. I placed the background pieces first, and then I'm going to start placing the arms and legs. But I wanted to see if I had missed anything, and it looks pretty good so far. So I laid out the leg fabrics, and I cut 3 by 3.5-inch strips to use for the arms. I'm gonna play around with the sleeve fabric because I want as much of the print as I can get in the design. So here it is. The pieces are all laid out. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to continue sewing. For the space in between the legs, I'm using a 2 by 5 inch strip of background fabric. So I went ahead and started with that block. And I'm going to trim that down to a 5 by 5 inch block. And then I sewed the background fabric to the leg block. I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and I sewed both sides to complete the first row. I'm placing the blocks of the second row right sides together as well, and I'm sewing those using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And now I have 2 rows complete. Okay, so now I've got to work on the arm and sleeve block, and these ones are pretty straightforward. For this, I started by trimming down the sleeve portion of the printed fabric as close as I could to the print because I want to save as much of it as I can. And then I placed the flesh colored fabric on the print. I laid it out at first to make sure that the direction was good. And then I went ahead and sewed using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once that was done, I pressed the seams down and then added the border fabric to the bottom of this block, and here it is. These blocks need to be pressed and trimmed to 5 inches, so I put them aside and completed the top row. I trimmed the blocks to 5 inches, checked one more time to make sure the orientation was good, and went ahead and sewed the third row. So I went ahead and pressed the rows nice and flat, and I also squared them up. Then I laid the pieces out one more time to make sure everything was perfect before I did the final sewing. It looks pretty good, so I went ahead and sewed using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And here it is. It's so cute. I love this block so much. It was so fun to put together. I took measurements as I went along, so I know what I need. I'm so excited to finish the rest of these blocks, so I went ahead and got the pieces prepared. I'll have measurements in the description below if you're interested. So now I've got 3 cute little piles of fabric and I'm gonna get started chain stitching these blocks. I'm gonna do as many as I can before I have to stop and trim. I find this is the most efficient way to get a lot done quickly. And here they are. I think they're so cute. These blocks were so fun to make. I'll be working on the boys next, so if you want to see how that turns out, please subscribe to my channel. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!